Now, without further ado, let's welcome Sofía, and she will show us how compassion and evidence can really actually change the world.
Okay. Thank you for the intro, and thank you to EA Barcelona for hosting me. I'm super excited to be sharing my journey with you guys. Okay, so my name is Sofía. I'm actually from Alicante, Spain, a beautiful place if you want to visit. Right now I live in East Africa, but we will get to that part of the story. If you are here, it's because something about my career caught your interest. A little bit of a warning, it's a roller coaster, and the proof of that is that I need notes to talk about my life, so yeah. But yeah, so I started with quantum cryptography in Barcelona, and then I had a little bit of a life crisis. I quit my job and I shifted gears to work in evidence-based development. That shift took me through Ghana, Boston, London, and then Uganda. So I'm gonna try to I'm gonna connect all these experiences and explain you why I'm so passionate about using evidence to help improve lives. Yeah, okay, so let's rewind to the beginning. I studied physics and engineering here in Barcelona. And after my bachelor's, I went and worked in a startup doing quantum cryptography, which I won't get into, but if you guys are interested, I can talk about it afterwards. Yeah, I was actually working in Castelldefels for a couple of years. Yeah, this is a picture of me in the lab. We were doing cutting-edge stuff. We were trying to commercialize quantum cryptography technologies. And yeah, it was very cool. It was intellectually stimulating. And the best part, and what my dad was reminding me, is that this was exactly what I had studied for. But yeah, during this time, I had also started volunteering for an NGO that was providing digital literacy programs in northern Ghana and had headquarters in Barcelona. I was helping them here in logistics and technology and so on. And after 1 year of involvement, I had the chance to go to Ghana. Yeah, so I took a break from work and packed some routers and headed to a rural village in Ghana. And that trip triggered everything else afterwards. It was my first time in Sub-Saharan Africa, and I went all in. I spent 3 weeks in a rural village. I was staying in a modest guest house and working with the local team to install some internet cable in the classrooms. And that trip was personally was a wake-up call because I always knew I was privileged. But experiencing it firsthand was humbling in a way that I hadn't felt before. But then professionally, it also got my head spinning in terms of this NGO was measuring impact, thinking about, okay, we put computers in a classroom. That's our job. But then I kept thinking, what's afterwards, right? Are kids learning more? Is it helping them thrive? It's even digital literacy, the program that these people need the most when they are living in a community that has basic access to education and health. So then, yeah, I went back to Spain. It was 3 weeks. It was difficult in a personal level. Things in rural Africa are pretty cheap. So when you spend a lot of time with the community there, you meet some very nice people, and then you notice that you can help them with few euros out of your pocket. You can help a mom to afford dinner for their children with something like 5 euros, and then you can pay the school fees for someone that had to drop out of school because his parents died in an accident. And then you can do that with few people, but then you can't do it with everyone. But so I remember coming back to Barcelona, going for dinner the first night afterwards, and I paid 20 euros for my dinner, which is like pretty common. And then my mind was like, okay, like this could pay like a school fees for this number of kids. Or like, so a lot of thinking about that. It's a complex journey, like all coming from the privilege of being able to help. But the tension between wanting to help and realizing that, yes, like personal support wouldn't be enough really stuck with me. And then I discovered the field of development economics. I started reading everything I could find. These are Banerjee, Duflo, and Kremer. These are the Nobel Prizes in Economics, 2019, and they were awarded the Nobel Prize for their experimental approach to alleviating global poverty. As Duflo puts it, the goal is to analyze, to evaluate social policies with the same rigor we use with new vaccines or new medicines. Just like to give you an example of what the research looks like, imagine you're running a program to improve educational outcomes in like a developing country. Like the most typical idea you can come up with is, okay, let me provide schools with textbooks, or like let me pay school fees for children. But a few years ago, actually several years ago, like the most cost-effective program to improve education was giving kids deworming pills. The evidence backing this is the following. This guy, Kremer, led one of the first studies in this area. His goal was to test this very common program of like giving textbooks to schools. And he was like ran it with few schools in Kenya. And surprisingly, the study found that there was no improvement in student performance. They were comparing kids with textbooks in classrooms and kids without textbooks. This happened because for many Kenyan children, English is their third language, so they couldn't really understand what was going on with the books. In development, these kind of mistakes or assumptions happen very often. And because the end beneficiaries of the aid are not the ones paying for it, the feedback loops are a bit broken and are not as effective as they should. So then this guy, Kremer, ran another experiment and noticed that giving deworming pills to children was improving learning outcomes a lot. And this is because in many parts of the world, kids drink water that is contaminated, and this leads to worms in their stomach. What happens is that this is not fatal, so that kids don't die from this. So global health organizations haven't paid a lot of attention, but it affects a lot to like their attendance to schools, or also to their concentration capabilities. So yeah, they discovered that giving deworming pills to kids increased a lot school attendance, increased a lot learning outcomes, and even like economic outcomes years after. This kind of insight blew my mind. This wasn't like feel-good aid. This was like science applied to development. I felt like I had found a field that combined this rigor and this like analytical mindset that I had from physics with this like real world impact that I was craving to have, and I knew I wanted to be part of it. So I quit my job. I didn't have a very good plan. I just knew I wanted to pivot. So yeah, after that year was a bit intense, like emotionally and professionally. I went back to Ghana. I went to Malawi with a few small projects, and I started taking every course I could in development economics. I signed up for these MicroMasters programs. It's called MicroMasters in Data Economics and Design of Policy. It's a series of online courses which are like on economics, on experiments, on poverty alleviation, and it's taught by the Nobel Prizes that I showed you before. It started kind of a side hustle, but it ended up taking a lot of my time. I was kind of like studying for 12 hours a day for like 7 days a week, and it added up to like 900 hours It was super intense, but I loved it. And funny enough, when you complete the courses online, you can apply to finish the master's at MIT. Honestly, like going to MIT and study with the Nobel laureates that had started the field was like never on my mind when I started this. But then I started taking the courses, loving them, and doing good in the exams. So I tried my luck. Honestly, it was kind of like, I was honestly like applying for jobs. I was not looking at any other masters or like, this was like the only one that I felt like, okay, this is great to shift towards development. Yeah, and I tried my luck. I got in. I got funding, and a few months later, I was moving to Boston. At MIT, yeah, MIT was a privilege. I got to deep dive in randomized evaluations, economics, and public policy, learning from the people that had literally created the field. This is Esther Duflo. I also took classes in Harvard on like leadership, communication, negotiation. Yeah, it was a privilege. And something that really added up as well was these 20 classmates. We were from all around the world, and everyone cared so much about making the world a better place. So it was like constantly learning from one another about like different national contexts, but also like we were coming from government, the social sector, consultancy, research. So it was like constant learning. I wrapped up my year with an internship at Evidence Action, which, funny enough, is the organization that's implementing at like big scale the deworming program I was talking about before. So it was amazing. I think they have already delivered like 2 billion treatments for like less than 50 cents a treatment, which is great. I learned also a lot about evidence and using data to take program decisions. After I finished my experience at MIT, I knew I wanted to work on the field and get like the context of what was happening. And then I got into charity entrepreneurship. Charity entrepreneurship is an incubation program that was born out of the effective altruism movement. It is a fully funded 2-month program in London that's designed to support social entrepreneurs to launch high-impact nonprofits. It's kind of like the Y Combinator, but for nonprofits. So far, they have launched 50 high-impact organizations in just 4 years, addressing some of the world's most pressing problems. During the program, they train you on nonprofit entrepreneurship. They help you find a promising idea. They also help you find a co-founder, and they even support you in securing your first year of funding. And by the way, they asked me to tell you that the applications to the program open the 3rd of August, and they encourage everyone to sign up to their newsletter to learn about the programs and the charities that come out of the program. But yeah, before the program started, actually, they placed me with one of their alumni nonprofits in Ghana for a few months. So I moved to Ghana. Yeah. These are pictures of a health center in rural Ghana. I worked on a program that was promoting informed contraceptive choices in rural areas. The problem that we were addressing was short-spaced pregnancies. Like, for example, a mom that has a kid 1 year after having their previous baby. And the idea was that if we, that comes with a risk for moms and for babies. The idea is that if health workers provide more personalized support to mothers, they might want to take contraceptives and space more their births. So we trained some health workers. This is one that was in our program on how to provide more personalized counseling. We ran a small-scale evaluation where we were asking mothers about their contraceptive choice. And we learned that better access to information was not increasing contraceptive uptake in this context. So the organization made a tough call to shut down the program because it was not working. It was hard, but it also taught me a lot about being honest about impact and making decisions based on that data and not intuition. So it was a great learning experience. After that, I went back to London. I joined the incubation program. It was a couple of very intense months where I matched with a highly skilled co-founder. I developed a plan to implement a very cost-effective and scalable education program and successfully raised around $173,000 to launch a pilot. And I co-founded Learning Alliance, which was super exciting. The problem that we are tackling in Learning Alliance is education poverty. 86% of children in sub-Saharan Africa can't read and comprehend a simple paragraph by the end of primary school. If this was a health issue, it would be considered an epidemic. I think everyone agrees that kids have the right to education, but not only that, there's like a very strong link between education and economic outcomes later in life. Research shows that learning how to read and comprehend a paragraph can increase your income later in life by around 25%, which is an incredible return on investment. Education is also associated with broader economic growth, reductions in child mortality, women empowerment, and reduced school dropout. So yeah, this is the challenge we're tackling. Now, why kids are not learning? Teaching in these conditions is incredibly difficult. This is teacher Dorothy. She's one of the teachers in our program. She's teaching in primary 1, and in this class has around 100 children. She went to teacher's college, she got her training, but the way they trained her how to teach is ineffective. They taught her to teach by lecture, repetition, and copying. So it's not hard to see why kids aren't learning. At Learning Alliance, we support teachers like Dorothy with an evidence-based approach, which is called structured pedagogy. It combines 4 elements. Very simple lesson plans for teachers to follow, training for teachers on how to implement the lesson plans, teacher coaching, and then data on teacher and student performance to keep improving the program. Learning Alliance arrived in Uganda in September 2024, and of course I moved to Uganda. We built a team. We hired 6 fantastic teacher coaches that were previously fantastic government teachers. And we launched our pilot earlier this year. We decided to go big because we wanted to have rigorous data on how the program was going. We started working with 50 schools and reaching around 14,000 children. This is how the pilot looks like. This is one of our coaches, Coach Bob. So every other week, I go with Coach Bob to sit in Dorothy's classroom and observe our program. Dorothy uses the lesson plan we have given her. She revises what she has taught in the previous class, and then she starts teaching a new sound. She teaches children how to make the sound. For example, letter S makes the sound S, and then plays some games where kids participate, and then she gets into reading with that sound. This is where the tricky part comes, because teachers are used to teach by repetition. So, for example, she would write the word cow in the blackboard and ask kids, she would say, "This is the word cow, repeat with me," and then all the kids could be like, "Cow, cow, cow." But they were actually not learning how to read. Now the routine we taught her is teaching reading by having kids sound out the letters of the words and then putting the sounds together. We are seeing great improvement in the way teachers teach. We are working with around 200 teachers like that. And in just one term, we have gotten most of the teachers to master the reading routine. Program implementation is going great, and we are seeing it translate into kids participating in class and reading and writing. We, of course, are also collecting rigorous data. We are running a quasi-experimental evaluation with 1,500 students, and we will have impact results by the end of 2025. But the early signs are very promising. These are, of course, some more numbers. In our pilot, our cost to get kids to read and comprehend a paragraph is currently $37. We expect that by 2030, we can reach around 1 million students, and that the cost per student to get them to read could be around $9. This means that an investment of $9 could raise a child's lifetime income by 25% or more. That kind of leverage is what excites me, as small investments can change the trajectory of a child's life. So that's where I am now. I would never have predicted this path, and I feel incredibly lucky. I get to work on something I deeply care about, surrounded by brilliant and mission-driven people. If there's one takeaway I hope you leave with, it's that it's okay to take a leap. The career is not a linear path, and sometimes the most meaningful careers come from trusting your gut, taking that leap, following your curiosity, and being willing to start over. So thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions for Sofía?
I wanted to ask you, when you say that they're going to learn how to read, and how much time do you count that they're going to learn?
Yeah, we are currently estimating that it will take us around 2 to 3 years to teach.
So is it the $37, is that over 2 years?
Yeah.
Ah, wow.
Yeah. We already accounted for that. I mean, there are programs that just take kids that don't know how to read at all, and they are an intensive program teaching them how to read, and that takes 3 to 4 months. But we are doing it through the government schools and training government teachers. So we it's a little bit more of a systems change. So we're expecting that it will take around 2 to 3 years. And that amount of money was accounting for the 3 years. Yeah.
Have you had any, so far, I missed half the talk, so maybe
It's okay.
you've said, but so far have you had any data already on whether, on what has changed?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. So we are doing a lot of monitoring. We have our coaches fill a survey every time they go to schools. So we have daily data, which is showing a lot of program implementation. Teachers are teaching the way we are asking them to do it. That's great. We have recently implemented also some kind of mastery tests. So every time a coach goes to the classroom, they pick randomly 5 kids and they ask them to read 5 words. And so we are now getting a fair amount of data to start analyzing it. We are seeing a positive signal. But actually now I was super busy. I was super busy today because we are working towards a midline evaluation of the project. So I'm selecting some control schools that are similar to these treatment schools and evaluating how the test that we use is words per minute read. So we are planning to do that evaluation in July and get some initial results. Fingers crossed, yeah. Yeah.
Was it hard to get the government of Uganda to work with you? Because I imagine it was.
That's a super good question, and I think we always have to think about government partnerships, always, and especially in education, which is so core to a country. We were super lucky I don't know if you've heard of an organization called Innovations for Poverty Action, but they do research on poverty alleviation, and they are based in many African countries. So we reached out to them in our first visit to Uganda, and they were super helpful in connecting us with the government. So we actually arrived in Uganda and we had a meeting with the Ministry of Education. And I was like, okay, let's launch here. And they have been really, really supportive. In terms of allowing us to run our pilot, I've heard it's a bit difficult to scale through the government. So this is a challenge we are going to start facing next year.
So this is just a pilot, and then
Yeah. We are planning to, after getting impact results, we are planning to expand to other schools. But we make a priority working with the national government and also with the district government. And it's like you have to follow a very specific way of interacting with them. Like you have to involve them in the design of the program. You have to like ask them before like involving new schools and so on. So yeah. Yeah.
At the beginning of your talk, you told us a little bit about unintended consequences and feedback loops, which for me is one of the most interesting dynamics when you study a system or enter into systems thinking. Did you happen to find any unintended consequences of your program, your project, or maybe other ones that you find in the same region?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for Learning Alliance, not yet. I think what comes to mind is the experience with Maternal Health Initiative in Ghana. We were the theory of change was that mothers didn't know enough about contraceptives, so that by having more information, they would, of course, use them more because it was good for their health. But it seemed that they already knew about contraceptives uptake, about what contraceptives do and what are their options. And what played a role there was culture. It's a Muslim community, so there's also men have several women and they already do some kind of birth spacing, depending on which woman is pregnant, and then they are with the other wife, and so very cultural that you don't really have a take if you don't spend a lot of time there. So I think we were assuming that just information would change this, and it's actually very cultural. So it was great to run an evaluation to notice that this was not happening, because otherwise you could continue just training health workers on providing better advice, and it was not having an impact. Yes.
Do you mind explaining a little bit more about the fundraising process, both in order to get the funding that you needed to run the pilot, and also looking forward, what you're thinking?
Great.
If you're ready for that.
Yeah. We are talking about that a lot now. So to get the program started, it's all about through charity entrepreneurship. They actually support you a lot in the early stage, so it's very likely that you get between $150,000 to $200,000 to get the program started. And it's through high net worth individuals. They have funding circles of people that are interested in funding either global health and development or animal charities. And yeah, that's the kind of easiest step. And then I think there's a bit of a gap in the second year for charities, because we are, for example, education programs are kind of slower, just the learning pace. It's not maybe as quick as putting vaccines. So we are at a stage that we are still not getting impact data, but we need to start fundraising again. So that's some people in the community are actually looking into getting funding for charities that are mid-sized, that are haven't made it to the stage of GiveWell, for example. But yeah, there are several AIM charities that are getting now GiveWell funding, the global health ones, which is great. I think we are looking now at small foundations, individuals that are interested in donating to early stage projects.
is it something the Ugandan government can fund, or is that not?
I think and that's a great question, and I think that's like our end game, if that makes sense. Kind of like implement this program through the government. So have the government to like have one budget line for like teachers training on phonics, and that would allow us to have impact nationwide. I think we have to work several years with the government to get them on board and to see how the program is working, get a lot of data, and then can convince them. But it doesn't seem like an easy thing to do. Yeah. Yes.
What would a typical day look like for you?
Yeah. Okay, so the split we did was I spent 1 week in Kampala, which is the capital city of Uganda, and then 1 week in the schools with a team. So it depends where I am. When I'm in Kampala, I do a lot of kind of like operations. So like getting the entity set up in Uganda, making money transfers, like ensuring like all these small tasks that need to happen in order for the organization to exist and work. Now we are like 9 people working on the organization after 1 year and a few months, and it's like so much work. But then, and then when I go to the schools, I basically go with our coaches to see how the program looks like. I every day go with a different coach and sit in a different classroom. And when I do that, my job is it's fun because it's like coaches sit in the classroom and give feedback to teachers on how they did it, and like the strong things they did and the points where they can improve. And then I do the same with coaches. So like I see how they coach, and then I tell them, oh, you should have maybe like given a little bit less feedback and more focused, or like try to establish a good relationship with the teacher, things like that. So it's a lot of adventure. Yeah. Yes.
You said like for now it costs like almost 40 euros to get someone to read, but in the future it's like below 10. How are you planning to make such a difference? Because it's way cheap.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it happens all through kind of leveraging, like creating systems and having our coaches kind of reach more schools. So like in our pilot, the main expense is kind of teacher trainings and having coaches visit the schools. So we have to scale through hiring people. In our pilot, we have like each coach covers 10 schools, but we are seeing that it's like actually teachers are like, you are coming here too often. We don't want to see you this often, please. Like, so I don't know if that's good, but like we can kind of like be very intense with the program in the beginning when we add a new school, but then kind of like come every month or every 2 months and maybe like leverage a little bit more technology to ensure that like the program is happening. So yeah, by having like coaches take over more schools and using technology.
How did you persuade the teachers to use your method?
Yes. That's a great question. Yeah, so I think one problem here is with government teachers and with NGOs is that we come here super excited about the change we're going to make, and then we are in a school for 2 years and then we leave, and then they stop implementing the program. And there are many NGOs doing these things. So they have kind of a mindset of like, oh yeah, we're gonna kind of like get this training that has food. And then, yeah, we're just like gonna do what they say, and then if they stop coming, that's it. We are trying first, like right now we are like very intensive in terms of visits. So like they do it because we are on top of them. But what we have talked with our organizations doing this, and what it seems to change their mindset is to see their students learning. So like to show them data right now on like, look, like your students can't read out like a single word in 1 minute, and then show them also the data afterwards, saying, hey, this is what you achieved following this. So it's kind of like involving them with the data as well. Yes.
Is the learning method specific to Uganda students, or is it applicable to other countries or other continents?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're using phonics, which is an evidence-based method to learn English. So this is worldwide, but the curriculum, the specific curriculum we are using, it's designed in Uganda. So like there are many other organizations working there. Yeah, not that many. There are some other organizations working on kind of implementing a phonics curriculum, but it has to be adapted to every context. Yeah.
Are you being able to prove, let's say, like a positive feedback loop, besides like getting into the number into the country that more people are learning to read, but besides that, like a positive feedback loop in terms like what brings that more people learning to read into the country, into the culture, into the, I don't know, any other indicator maybe that government is interested about that?
You mean like after, like what implies learning how to read? Like what comes after?
That, and then if that really change or brings something to the community in terms of long term, of that have changed their mindset, or how they communicate each other, or how they get more interested in different stuff that maybe they don't have before they learn to read?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something you also wonder when you work in a community that's like, they live from agriculture, right? And that's a question that takes years and years to answer, because the kids that you are teaching how to read now like they still have to go several years through school and then see what they do afterwards, if they like get more jobs or not, but researchers are looking into this question now. Actually, there are some very cool studies that just came out of like researchers are now contacting people that did experiments around like 20 years ago in kind of Liberia, Ghana, some other countries on foundational learning, and they're trying to track the students that you worked with and see what they are doing. And that's where the data on economics outcomes is coming from, and they are seeing impact in like people on the programs is more likely to have a job, is more likely to have a higher income, another kind of also like health outcomes and so on. So I don't think ourselves are gonna kind of like have these long-term feedback loops, and we are gonna rely more in the research existing on that. Yes.
How applicable is the program to other potential subjects such as math or science?
Yeah, that's great. We are thinking about implementing a math program as well. Actually, other organizations are doing both foundational literacy and foundational numeracy. We wanted to start with reading, but maths, it's also, like there are very simple ways to start teaching kind of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and these are like the basic operations kids should know, and they also don't know. So, I mean, it's obviously a different curriculum, but there's also like programs on that. So we are actually planning to be adding maths soon. Yeah, and then it's also like actually like the intervention is actually like simplifying the curriculum for teachers so that it's easier for them to teach if they have not been trained in an excellent way. So it could be applied to many other courses, right? It's just like simplify, like coming up with a curriculum, making it very simple for teachers, and just like giving it to them and training them. Yeah. You had a question.
Why did you choose education and this program? Like, was it charity entrepreneurship that suggested it?
Yeah. Okay, so charity entrepreneurship has researchers doing, they do some research previous to the program where they try to find in literature ideas that have the potential to be very cost effective and scalable. So when I went into the program, there were 3 ideas that I was considering. The first one was education. The second was SMS reminders for reminding the mothers to take their kids for a vaccine. And then the other one is to use mass media to prevent violence against women. I loved all the ideas. All the ideas had a lot of pros and cons. For example, the health one was it's very impactful because it's very cheap, but you are actually like sending an SMS. Like it's very cheap to send an SMS, but you're actually like shifting like vaccination rate by a small bit. But it's very cool. Like you are not spending. It's very cost effective. Then the other one, the one on women violence prevention, I loved it, but it was also an intervention that was a lot of research because it didn't have that many papers backing the intervention. So it was also a lot of like uncertainty added on top of like founding a charity. It was like, okay, how do it's like so super complex, like both how to culturally, what's the message you have to send in mass media to prevent violence against women, and also like, how do you measure it? It's so complicated. Like you can't go to a woman and ask her like, does your like husband hit you? So I mean, it's super exciting. I was a bit afraid, honestly. And then this is I didn't have experience in education before, but I love the idea of working on systems change. So like working in government schools, working with government teachers, and like the education sector to kind of like improve the system. But I must say all the other ideas were also started by colleagues of mine. They're doing like great job. The health one is in Nigeria. Actually, I think this is public already. Okay, they have gotten some like good money for their program. And then the other one started in Rwanda. And they're also doing great, so yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I hate to be the one who locks the people asking questions. I think the questions are great and you're doing amazing. I think you deserve another round of applause.